Yo, yo! What's up, everybody? It's Carter. Welcome to day 6 of the Casino Source Code event. Today we're talking about leveraging assets, crystallizing your portfolio, and we're going to talk a lot about just straight up business and how to build a business, how to build an unbelievable empire, both for apps, but just in terms of reskinning and getting your whole portfolio built out. Now, this is going to have to do with casino, but it's also just got to do with basic business stuff. So, yo, I just want to give you guys a straight up introduction. Thanks for coming so much. Everyone who bought the Farkle code, totally awesome. Yes, fired up for you. You're going to get a lot out of this one because you purchased that, which I'm really excited about. And for everyone else, you're going to get a really good insight into not only how I build my portfolios, but how a lot of businesses and a lot of reskinners build theirs that have had a lot of success. And so today, what we're going to talk about is building a reskinning business, how you can effectively create your holiday portfolio and the source code sale. So we're going to go through this. And I want to show you guys exactly what you should be thinking about while you're building your app businesses, because this is just a kind of education that I wish I had gotten back, a couple of years ago. And if I had known this, it would have helped me a lot. I would have made a lot more money. And I just want to be able to pass this on to you, especially this time of year, because you've stuck with it for 6 days straight through this promotion. This is so awesome, and I think that this is going to be really valuable. So when we're talking about building a business, or a reskinning business, I crossed out reskinning there because building a reskinning business and building a business are very, very similar. In fact, whenever you build any business, it usually comes down to some pretty core principles. And what those core principles are make money, cut your costs, and make more money than you spend. And you might be looking at that and saying, okay, obviously this is not rocket science. I get that, Carter. Thanks for the heads up. But I definitely want to dive into this because this is something that I'm starting to see more and more. And the more I consult with people, especially on the big level, but this also comes down to the indie level, I see these core principles just being forgotten. And I want to walk through them specific to you guys and your portfolios and what you're building, and so that you can do it the right way and so that you can really capitalize on building a profitable business. So when it comes to making money, right? Like what are the big pieces of that? One is obviously education. I'm a huge proponent of education and learning and always making yourself better and stronger. I really believe that. I think hard work is unbelievably important for making money, especially at the beginning. And I think strategy and timing are also incredibly important. There's a million things that go into this, but I think that these 4 are the pieces, especially for the app business, that make a huge impact. And I think a lot of us, a lot of people in the community, we look at this is what we focus most of our time on because it's fun and that's what we're just naturally going to look at. Now, the other side of it is cutting costs. And when you cut costs in business, it comes down to things such as management. How do you manage the people in your company? How are you effectively using their time? What your strategy is. How well are you rolling out things? Are you getting them done on time? Are you getting things done within the budgets you laid out? Reporting. How do you know what's working and what's not? And then finally, leverage, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. And with leverage, that can be also thought of as resourcefulness, or how do you squeeze blood from a stone type of thing. How do you really get the max value out of a lower amount of cost? And when people think about growing their reskinning business, most people think that making money is way more important than cutting costs. Because often you're going to start off at ground zero, and you need to go somewhere, and so all you focus on is, all right, how do I make money? And you start to make, let's say, $100 a month, and you say, all right, well, I got to get that to $1,000 a month. But what's good about that is that it definitely gives you the ambition and the drive and the fire to get going. But when you think about making money, it tends not to build systems, right? It tends to build these kind of throw everything at the wall and just keep gunning it until something hits. And I've seen this happen a lot. And if you're watching this, I bet it's in some place in your life, maybe in apps, maybe somewhere else, you've done this too. And that's totally okay. That's what we're going to talk about. Because the growth mindset is most likely your nature. I mean, it's most likely most of our natures because you're interested in marketing and money and monetization and all this sort of thing. But realize that you can't fill a leaky bucket. Okay, no matter how much growth you have, you can't fill a bucket if you're bleeding costs, if your structure isn't set up the correct way. And so when you're building your reskinning business, you really want to focus on cutting your costs just as much as you focus on making money. Okay, you really want to focus on those things like management and reporting, even if you're very small and you're just getting started, because it's the number one way to build a profitable business from the absolute start. And really quick, understand that cutting costs does not mean being cheap whatsoever, okay? It doesn't mean that if you have a choice between a $5 source code and a $500 source code, that you should always go for the $5 one because that's going to cut your costs. What cutting costs mean is that instead of looking at, well, with a $5 source code I can make 50 bucks and with a 500 one I can make 5,000, you start looking at, well, with a $500 source code I have a team in place and I can make more money than it's going to cost me to reskin this, so I'm going to go for the big win, versus the $5 source code where you say, well, the amount of money I'm going to make isn't going to outweigh the team I have, so maybe I should just do this myself. So I should go for the small source code. It just goes into how you calculate ROI. Okay, so it never has anything. I'm not just saying that because I sell source code. I'm saying that's like just how you should think about making any decision in your business. Is how does cost affect compare to your upside. So what this all means is when you measure your growth efforts and where you're putting your energy, you also want to measure what your cost looks like. Okay, so you just want to start to look at both of these pieces of your business equally. Doesn't matter if you're very, very small or if you're massive. I mean, some of you guys out there are making $200,000-$300,000 a month, which is unbelievable. And some of you guys are just getting started and maybe you're making $20 a month. But you have to start with this mindset as soon as you can. Okay, because if it gets out of control, you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to patch it up and fix it down the road. And just keep that in mind. So what can you do with this idea of, okay, not only do I want growth, but I want to have a very efficient, low-cost system that can allow me to focus on the growth. How can you do that specifically to build a portfolio for the holidays? Now, we're going to talk about casino, but I want anyone out there, even if you don't buy a source code, I want you to know that you can apply this to your company. It doesn't have to be a reskin business. It can be a regular app business. It can be a website. It can be a coffee shop. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But this is just a foundational principle that you guys can use starting today. You can use this kind of education. So the first thing you do is you take a look at your apps. If you don't have any apps or many apps in your portfolio yet, make an educated guess. You can ballpark what it would cost to get a design and a development and vector costs and some sounds on stock photo, whatever. And start measuring exactly how much it costs to make each one. And more importantly, think about or put down an actual system that will allow you to determine that cost. So you say, all right, a reskin of this roulette game is going to be 7 hours from this designer, and then 3 hours from this developer, and 2 hours from this ASO, and 1 hour for this publisher. That together is $284, or whatever it is. And then you start to kind of ballpark what that goes for the first reskin and everything else, because the reason why reskinning works so well is that the first app is typically the most amount of money, and then when you reskin that again, it's less money to do because your designers get used to it, and you start to kind of figure out what's going on. You don't have to reskin the whole thing, and second reskin, and it kind of goes that way. That's why the model works well, because the aggregate of building all of these, especially using a source code, is going to be much, much less than if you build all these all these apps individually. But what happens is that so many people don't keep this in mind, and they end up spending just as much money on every reskin they make. Okay, they treat every app just like it's an entirely new project. And so what happens is they might go out and they have this idea that they're going to create a portfolio, but what they do is they go buy an arcade game here and a casino game there and a trivia app there that's under the dining room table, but it's not strategic. And so what you can do is you can look at your portfolio and start to realize, all right, what makes this strategic? Like, how do I build a strategic portfolio? It's by leveraging all the work and all the assets that you have, right, to make the reskins, but also to use the other apps. And what I mean by this, and I'll show you guys an example in a second, is that when you're building your apps, after you build the first one, think about how can I use everything that I just did and cut my costs in half to make the next one happen? How can I do half as many hours for my designer? How can I use half as many hours for my developer to make the exact, a completely new app, but for half the cost? And that is the most important thing, because when people think of strategic portfolios, they think about cross promotions and theming it all correctly and getting all the install rates, and that is important. But what they don't think about is why it's so effective from a business standpoint, from a pure profit and loss standpoint. They don't think about that side of the strategy, and that is just as important. So here's an example, right? We're going to use Farkle, which is what we sold yesterday. And let's say you build your Farkle up, you reskin this app, you put it up there, and you create a couple reskins, you update a few things, you add a couple new features, and you publish it into the App Store. And you've done this. It's great. You invested your money. You have how much it cost. You know your upside, everything else. And now what happens is you start to look at other codes. Like maybe you've purchased something else on the Bluecloud sale so far. Maybe you have your own apps that you purchased somewhere else, which is great. But how do you use these graphics? Like what do you like? What can you do to take what you've already done and reinvest it into the new app? What do? Can you use the sounds? Can you use the buttons? Can you repurpose some of these different things? And you start to see what you can do. So when you start to see these new casino apps, you start to say like, hey, I already did some chips in the roulette game, and I already designed some dice for my Farkle game, and I already did some buttons for my Surf Slots game, and I already have a wood table from my high-low game, or whatever it may be. But all of a sudden you're going to start to say like, why don't I just use that all in this game and use the different coding technology and theme it differently? And all of a sudden you get this awesome game with a reskin, and the portfolio starts to look like a brand, and it's done so much more cost effectively because this is all built on your designs from the original reskin of the source code that you did. And you can start to do this with all of your apps, your casino portfolios. It's great because you can reuse so much. There's so many assets within the casino world that look similar. Casino has a very, very clever design. It works really well almost across the board, and it's very distinct in what you do. So this is why after Farkle we built another dice game, because I looked around and I said, well, we've got this dice game, and we can only reskin it so many times, which we actually didn't end up doing. Like I said, we just did the original game. But I said, well, why don't we just use a lot of these assets and try to build something else? What can we do that would... And so what we did is we built the Craps game, which is done really, really well. It's on all 3 platforms. Obviously, the retention's been terrific. I mean, the amount of the session length, I think, is 3 or 4 minutes long. People keep coming back to play. It's got this whole new keyword set. It's got more volume. I think there's 500 or 600 results when you type in Craps, but it's still very viable. There's a lot of holes with the keywords, things like that. But most importantly, this gave us the ability to leverage our assets. And you started to see, like, we could take the buttons, and all we did was change the font and change a few different pieces of it, but we built a whole back-end different coding structure to create an entire new game. But what happens for you guys is that all you have to do is the design side. You don't have to worry about the development. So you can reuse all your design assets, put them in a new code, and your costs go way, way down, and all of a sudden you're starting to build this amazing portfolio. So we built this game, did really, really well, and we never released it. We held on to it, we worked on it, updated everything else, and we never released it because it's just one of those things. And so at some point we're going to put on the website for about $300, and probably in a few months, because I definitely want to make sure everyone who purchased this before the holidays gets a huge advantage on this. I definitely don't want to crowd the market or anything. But remember, my goal here is to help you build your portfolio. I want you guys to start thinking about how do you build a strategic portfolio in a way that is totally, totally cost effective for you and also leads to big, big gains for your business. How does that work? So I decided to get a little nuts. I actually told my project manager yesterday, I said, look, man, we're going to drop the price on this because I really want people to see that this is a big help for everyone building a portfolio. So for the next 24 hours, it's going to be $99. And let's see, with $300 to $100, so that's like 66% off. And the idea being that, this is why we built it, and I think that this is going to be a big value for you guys if you could reskin this too, using assets that you're already reskinning for any of the other codes that you've purchased. This is just a great way to throw this into your arsenal, to build your portfolio, to have great cross-promotion networks, to build a brand, but also be able to do it in a very cost-effective way. So just click the button below to get going on this. The Craps code's ready to go. It's gonna, be a kind of a, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just an easy way to roll in a lot of the work that you guys are gonna be doing already for your other codes, especially going to the holidays. It's just gonna fit right into that process. Always remember, we got the 14-day money-back guarantee. I'll always say that, always stand by that. So you got nothing to worry about. This is risk-free. And what we're gonna talk about tomorrow too is how you start to really kind of make that portfolio sing? You know, how do you cross promote, and what causes people to want to use a cross promotion network within a portfolio? And the idea being what hot tables are, you know, hot rooms, hot tables. And that's what causes people to get pushed between different games within your own brand, within your portfolio. And we're going to talk a lot about that and how you can do that effectively. So click the button to purchase the source code. I would definitely recommend also watching this video at some point again. I think you guys are going to get value out of it. There's a lot of information in here. But in the meantime, pick up this code. I think you get a lot of value out of this. And I will see you guys tomorrow. All right, take care.